Earlier today, Joe Biden just announced that there's going to be some sweeping moves regarding student loan debt cancellation. So in this video, I'm going to tell you what he just announced, how many people are going to have their student loan debts completely wiped out, and if you have student loans, exactly how much of that is going to be wiped out, and if you have more than what's being forgiven, when you're going to be expected to start your repayments. So I'm going to go over some of the numbers in terms of how much money this is going to be costing taxpayers, who is going to be getting the bulk of this student loan debt cancellations, and who is actually going to be qualifying for this because there are some stipulations. And of course, we'll talk about the economic impact as well as the political impact. And most importantly, what it's going to mean for your bottom line. Hey everyone, my name is Randy. Welcome back to the Late Night Grind. And right now on this channel, we are covering personal finance, investment markets, and even cryptocurrency news. So if any or all those topics interest you, make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button, join the Late Night Grind community. Don't forget to hit the bell notification icon. That way YouTube will send you a notification when I release a new video. And if you do a couple of things, I'd appreciate it. Smash the thumbs up button and watch the video all the way to the end. Those are some of the best things you can do to support a YouTube channel. So if you do that, I greatly appreciate it. All right, guys, let's jump into it. So this student loan debt cancellation, this has been a topic of conversation for many years now. It actually went back to 2011 at Occupy Wall Street. Well, recently in the past few years, there have been even more pressure being put on politicians, specifically progressive Democrats, putting pressure on their own constituents and those in power to do something with student loan cancellations, or what they call the student loan debt crisis. In the last election, if you remember, progressives like AOC and Chuck Schumer were pushing for $50,000 of student loan debts to be completely forgiven and wiped out. But of course that didn't happen, and it basically fell off the map until, well, what's coming up? Midterm elections in the United States. So of course it is now a hot button topic. So as of today, Joe Biden just announced that there is going to be $10,000 worth of student loan debt forgiveness completely wiped off the books. So who's going to qualify for this? Well, if you make less than $125,000 per year as a single taxpayer, or $250,000 per year if you are married filing jointly on your tax returns, you will qualify to have up to $10,000 of your student loan debts completely erased. Now, according to the numbers, there is over 9 million people that are under that amount, meaning 9 million people will have their student loan debts completely wiped out, completely forgiven. Now, there is significant amounts of people that have more than that, and they will have to begin resuming payments on the rest of that amount starting in January. So it was expected that Joe Biden was going to announce a continuation or a continued pause of making student payments. If you remember back from some of the COVID stimulus relief efforts, what they did was put a pause on student loan debt payments. That, of course, was actually supposed to end this month in August. They've actually pushed that forward now to starting in January of 2023 is when you will finally have to begin making those payments. He called it one last time you get a pause. Now, this $10,000 is specifically referring to federally backed student loan debt. There is something else called a Pell Grant, or a Pell student loan debt, which the government is actually giving $20,000 or up to $20,000 for those that have received Pell student loans. Okay, so how much is this costing taxpayers? Because that's exactly where it's coming from. Of course, the White House tried to spin it by saying this is government money. Well, government money is from the taxpayer money, and if it was newly printed money, well, that's inflationary money, which of course the taxpayers pay for anyway. So regardless, the White House has said this is probably going to cost somewhere in the neighborhood of about $360 billion will be wiped off the books and given people a clean slate that, of course, were struggling to make some of their student loan debts. At least that's what they were spinning it as. Now, of course, Joe Biden and some of the Democrats, while they were talking about this, making this announcement, have said, well, this is really nothing compared to the $2 trillion that Donald Trump had gave in terms of the tax cuts, in which they said only benefited the wealthy or the corporations. But of course, tax cuts are actually quantifiable and actually trackable to things like increased GDP, increased real wage growth versus inflation, and increased job growth and expansion. Whereas doing something like this, where using taxpayer money to pay off essentially consumer loan debt, is completely unprecedented according to some of these analysis. Now, some of the speculation was that this was intended to galvanize Democratic voters coming up in the midterm elections in November. Now, of course, in pretty much every single poll, the majority of the Democrat incumbents, well, they've been dramatically losing in the polls. So this was supposed to give them a rallying point, something that they could actually agree with Joe Biden on, because as a lot of them were doing, they're actually distancing themselves from the Biden administration because it was actually hurting their re-election chances. So doing something like this, they said, was probably essentially a way of, well, some called it paying for votes, others called it galvanizing a new voter base. Now, this $360 billion worth of new government spending to wipe out consumer debt, it's really a small number when compared to the total of student loan debt that is actually out there. There's actually about $1.7 trillion held by 40 million Americans of student loan debt. So having 9 million people having that $10,000 wiped off the books, or up to $10,000 wiped off of their books, is helpful for them. Of course, there's still people that owe a significant amount more than that. And like I said towards the beginning of this video, they're going to be starting payments starting in January. And of course, there is growing numbers of people on social media that are wondering, well, hang on, I got not just one job, but 2 or 3 jobs to pay off my student loan debt, and I did it in several years. What do I get for it? And they absolutely have a case to make. Because what this is doing is essentially disincentivizing hard work and rewarding doing something that they probably shouldn't have done in the first place, which was borrowing more money than they probably should have. Now, along with that $1.7 trillion of student loan debt, it was noted that that is higher than all of the credit card debt. That is also higher than all of the auto loan debt. Well, of course it is, because you need to have things like collateral, or a good credit history, or a source of income. Whereas student loans, all you needed was a signature in order to get tens of thousands of dollars of free loans, of essentially free government money. So it is very, very difficult, as you can imagine, to remain partisan on an issue like this, when yes, it is going to help out some people, but it could also divide and cause dissension even among Democrats who have already paid off their student loan debts. So nonetheless, if you make less than $125,000 per year or $250,000 per year as a couple, which of course includes the majority of people that hold credit card debt, you will be receiving $10,000 wiped off of your student loan debt. Now, I did want to make note, that is actually a capped number. So if you only hold, say, $2,000 of student loan debt left, you'll be receiving that $2,000 wiped off the books, and that's it. You won't be receiving a check for $8,000 for the remainder. It is basically what you held, it is basically the amount of debt you have under $10,000 will be wiped off. Now, there's going to be some more details coming out about these programs in terms of when this is actually going to be happening, but this was breaking news earlier today as the United States government, and especially the progressive Democrats, chalked up a win. All right, guys, that's going to be it for today's video. I really appreciate you watching all the way to the end, for smashing that thumbs up button, and as always, I'll see you guys on the next video.